right, what's going on, everybody? I don't know if you can see me or hear me or anything like that. It's saying I'm live, but I'm not showing anything on my screen just yet. My sound's working. Cool. All right, what's going on, man? I know it's been a minute since I've done a Saturday afternoon live stream, chopping it up live. Excited to be back before you once again. Um, I want to get some time to chop it up for anybody who may happen to come on and want to chop it up, want to talk about whatever. But I don't plan on being on long. And while I'm waiting for people to come through, and this is mostly be for the replay value, man, I got some exciting news. Some exciting news. And so there was this contest. You know what? This other thing would be in the garage. I don't know if you can hear all that, but I had like this vehicle just ride by the house. It was kind of loud, so I don't know if you can catch that sound. But anywho, so there was this contest in the Christian podcast community for the best podcast in 2019. I remember when they did the one for 2018, and I wasn't yet a podcaster. I really didn't start getting into podcasting until 2019. Actually, I think even though I was recording podcasts, quote unquote podcasts on YouTube, actually doing audio podcasts and having them go out to the various apps and all that and being serious about it, that didn't happen until about February or March for me in 2019. And it wasn't until about April that I had joined the Christian podcast community, headed by Andrew Rappaport and Colleen Sharp. And since doing that, since being linked up with those guys and everyone else from the community and all the podcasters and all the examples that were there, people who podcast and good podcasts and different ideas and how to go about their podcast, has been super encouraging ever since. And so I've just been really thankful for that. And I've also noticed that the listeners, those who listen to the podcast, have grown over time. The amount of downloads and everything else has grown. And so I really do appreciate everyone who have taken the time to listen to the Prescribed Truth podcast and who have found, beneficial content from it. It was really encouraging. It always surprises me, especially the content that I know that may either be a little controversial or a little difficult for me as I'm dealing with it, are the ones that people are, it seems that people are liking the most. I've heard a lot of feedback from the one I did dealing with should we forgive others when there's no repentance? Just the idea or the fact that I brought you along with me in my thinking process through all that. And though I didn't know how that would take with people, I think that a lot of people would like to listen to a podcast where the person seems to have it all figured out and not kind of wrestling with things, but just got their stuff together. And but I feel like a situation like that, when I'm brought with something new, for me to think about, and I'm wrestling with it, I know that I'm not the only one who wrestles with things. I'm not the only one who goes through a thought process concerning certain issues. And so I wanted to bring you guys along with me through that. And so I'm really thankful for that. And the video and the podcast I did with the Amber Geiger controversy, that was a tough one to do, but also it was very needed. There was a lot that was said in that concerning the issue with Trayvon Martin and so on and so forth. And so if you haven't listened to that, I would encourage you to check it out. And also found out that the one I did, a couple of videos I did on divorce, as far as divorce goes and marriage, was very impactful for a couple of people. So that was encouraging. So really thankful for those of you who check out the podcast and, really find benefit from the content. Really do. So with that being said, there was a contest, as I mentioned earlier, and I wanted to pull up the site. They did decide the winners. I'm gonna put a link in the description after this video is over. I should do it now, but if I try to go back and let's see if I can add things in the description if I can while I'm live, then I'll do that now. And if you refresh the page, then you'll see it. And with this site, you can go and listen to the actual podcast where they're discussing these things. And it's really good. So put 2019. Christian Podcast Awards. And the link. All right. Save that. Okay. So if you're watching now live, you can refresh the page and you should see it there. But yeah, listen to that podcast as they just listen to that podcast. I listened to it, and it was really good as they discussed all the podcasts that were nominated, and they hear Andrew Rappaport's and James White's feelings towards the podcast, what they thought about the different podcasts and what impacts them most about certain podcasts, and everything else was really encouraging to listen to. It was really insightful to hear about the different podcasts that are in that community. And if you are looking for like good podcasts, good Christian podcasts to listen to, check out the Christian podcast community. I'm not just saying it because I'm a part of the Christian podcast community. I'm saying it because I've listened to a lot of the podcasts on the Christian podcast community, and I too enjoy them. And there are some more that have been added that I have to find time to listen to. There's one in particular I'm really interested in listening to, and it's dealing with basically reviewing sermons of people that you may have never heard of in mainstream Christianity, but they have very good sermons, and they talk about this on the podcast. So check it out. All right. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pull up the site so you can look at it. And like I said, I got some exciting news, and it is exciting. Really thankful. But I'm gonna pull it up so for you guys. Hold on one second. Let me get to the right screen. All right, so this is the website, Christian Podcast Community, and see, this is 2019. Scroll down here. All right, so congratulations to 2019 winners. Here you can listen to the podcast there. But the best podcast, Revived Thoughts. And these are the ones I have not got a chance to listen to them yet, but I've heard a lot of good stuff about their podcast. All right, so it's Revived Thoughts with Troy Frazier and Joel Burtis. And if I pronounce your name wrong, brother, I'm sorry. Yeah, so this is what I was talking about that I want to get a chance to listen to. Revived Thoughts exists to bring history's greatest sermons back to life. Yeah, so check them out, man. So they got quite a few. See, they got over 8 pages worth of content already. So definitely worth checking out. I want to check them out. But the exciting news that I wasn't expecting is that Prescribed Truth is among the top Christian podcasts. And I am I am humbled to even see that this is number one. And it's I'm like, man, part of me was just number one, because Just Thinking is right here. And I know they were last year's winners. Let me go here. Few 2018 winners. And wait for it to load. So Just Thinking podcast was last year's best podcast. And man, their podcasts are great, man. Like the Bar Network, man. These, Virgil and and Daryl, these brothers are awesome. It's awesome, man. If you need I'm dealing with social justice and other topics within the Christian church. They made appearances on G3. They're really good, really good. And I just like their chemistry. I mean, it's always good to listen to a podcast when you have more than one host. You get to hear them bounce off of each other and interact with each other and see the chemistry. But Daryl and Virgil have this chemistry, man. I mean, they just have this beautiful chemistry. And so, just listen to it. Just check them out. Not for their chemistry, That's a plus, not for the chemistry, but for the actual content. And they actually study what they're talking about. They take time. Like they don't like release like once a week, you know what I'm saying? They actually, it's probably a couple weeks before they release something different, but you know that in between the times that they're releasing content, they're studying it, they're researching it, they're making sure they're bringing you everything you need to know concerning that particular topic. And so I really do appreciate that from them guys. So check them out. So going back to 2019 winners real quick. So yeah, so to be among the top Christian podcasts in 2019 is really humbling, and I'm so excited and thankful to Striving for Eternity Ministries and Christian Podcast Community for it. Just those who nominated Prescribed Truth and voted and everything else was awesome. We have, and amongst these, we have Relatable, and I haven't listened to this one yet, but I've heard good things. If you listen to this podcast, if you listen to the actual podcast where they announce the winners, they talk about Relatable and what Romans Road, which is another one I want to listen to. Are You Just Watching is one that I nominated. I know I nominated and voted for. Like, man, like they deal with movies and stuff like that where you can not Christian movies, secular movies, and they review them, you know, from a Christian worldview, and you know, and just talk about them. You know, you should listen to them. Just listen to them. Are You Just Watching? See, Today in Church, His Story podcast. I haven't heard that one yet. Voice of Reason Radio, A Word Fitly Spoken, Viewpoint on Mormonism, which all they do is on Mormonism, which I've heard. I got to listen to that because I haven't really had to deal much with Mormons. But I've been wanting to look into a lot of their content and look more into them. And so this is one I definitely want to check out. Pastors Talk, Stop and Think About It podcast. I've had the pleasure of being a guest on this podcast when they were dealing with social justice and the Trojan horse. It was the third episode of the series. And so really thankful to them guys, Phil Sessa and Steve. I think Steve stepped down he stepped down for now, as of now. But Phil Sessa, pastor, you know, good friend of mine, good brother in the Lord. Check that one out. The Free Thinker, Theology Nights. Just recently came in contact with this podcast and wanted to listen to it more. And Richard Radio, Todd Friel is well known. And so that was awesome. That's awesome. Let me go back here real quick. So I'm having some streaming issues, but that's okay. All right, so after that, you had the Best Christian Podcast episode from Voice of Reason Radio, Help, the Pastor is Drowning. So if you get a chance to listen to that one, in this website that I'm sending you, there's links to the actual podcast episodes where you can listen to them and check those out, and other episodes as well. It's windy outside. All right, so then now in the top Christian podcast episodes, we got 2 episodes from Just Thinking. I told you these people are good, man. So, they're good. You know, Just Thinking podcast, Just Thinking Slavery Reparations and a Biblical Theology of Socialism. Good episodes. Check those out, especially if you want to know more about the social justice issue and critical race theory and all those things. These guys are a good resource to listen to. Like I said, they research what they're talking about. And so you can trust what they're telling you is facts from a biblical perspective. Then Relatable, number 3, episode Sex, Change, Regret. I think this was like an interview of someone who had this. I haven't listened to it yet, but when they mentioned this on the actual podcast, when they were talking about all these podcasts, I was like, man, I'm interested in listening to this one. Voice of Reason Radio, comedian John Chris examined a lack of Christian accountability. I think that was somebody who had some kind of scandal, and which I'm not familiar with the story with this person. But they talk about not having accountability, which I think is an issue in a lot of areas where Christians are put in public spotlight. Like a lot of Christian rappers, hip hop artists, I don't know, they're not being held accountable and stuff like that. So you have a lot of people who stray away from the faith and everything else because of lack of accountability. So I want to listen to that one. But what I was encouraged is number 5. I made it among the top Christian podcast episodes with the Amber Geiger controversy and Dangerous Hugs. Really encouraged by that. James White, he talked about this episode And he mentioned how my approach to these issues is kind of like a lighter touch, and I think, and I appreciate that. I think the reason why I'm that way is because I know I have a tendency to be sarcastic, and I have a tendency to I will have a tendency to go like be more upset than I appear to be. When it comes to stuff like this, especially if you've seen episodes of mine when I talk about the past, when I was in the cult and my feeling towards false teachers and stuff like that. And so I try to approach a lot of these situations with a lot of grace. I try to. I'm not saying I do it the best. And if you watch some of my videos, there's some areas where I'm not as gracious. But yeah, I try to be, because these subjects are very tough. Like there's a lot of emotion around these issues. And as much as you want to just tell people, look, it's the truth, take it or leave it, saying people are not as receptive all the time, yet they need to hear that. They need to hear both. They need to hear that hard, cut, dry, straight to the truth, because that's how some people need to receive it. And some people need it just a little easier, so that I try to be both when I can be, and, try to just be wise as far as how I deal with certain subjects. But yeah, I mean, that's that. So I really appreciate that. And just to have this as one of the top podcast episodes that people found benefit from was amazing and super humbling. Stop and think about it. This is the Trojan Horse Part 2. You should check that one out. I mean, I think it was 4-part series to this. And so each one had a different guest on. Like I said, I was part of the third episode. And so yeah, check that out. Cold Case Christianity podcast. What is social justice? So the Cold Case Christianity podcast got 2 on there too. Oh, junk. I gotta check them out. The Cold Case podcast, Christianity podcast. What is social justice? And the other one is why the fine tuning of the universe points to the existence of God. That sounds good. Gotta check that one out. The Blue Stocking Baptist, The Wretched Art of Loveless Discernment with Reagan Rose. The Wretched Art of Loveless Discernment. And The Free Thinker, Is Calvinism Really Semi-Gnostic? So all these are good episodes, as I said. At least, like I said, I'm saying because they chose them as top Christian podcast episodes. I want to check them out myself when I get a chance. Especially this Cold Case one really caught my eye. Why the fine tuning of the universe points to the existence of God. I think that'd be from the title, it seems like it'd be a good one to have a conversation with agnostics and atheists and the like. And so yeah, man. So I just want to share that with you on this Chopping It Up live. I don't know what's going on with my internet connection. It's not coming through enough, whatever, but it is what it is. Okay. So I guess it's coming through enough. Baron, what's up, bro? And so yeah, so that's it, man. Didn't want to be here long. Finna go spend some time with the family and just get ready for the rest of this Saturday. What we're gonna do and what we got going on. So just keep me in prayer as I continue this work with this podcast and this channel. That the Lord give me wisdom, give me clarity of mind when it comes to these things, and just knowing what's important to deal with and what's timely, and all those things. And so with that being said, remember, this world is full of errors, but the only thing the doctor prescribes is truth. Blessings.